Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest vodcast from Honors Biology at Desert Ridge High School. I'm Mr. Galladay, and today we're going to be talking about the ideas that led Darwin to his ideas about natural selection. So you could think of this as the ideas about evolution that happened before Darwin. And so this, like I say, the main idea that we're going to try to get across here is the ideas that influenced Darwin that led him to his theory on evolution of species by natural selection. So this is a good place to update your table of contents, update your organization in your notebook, and it's a good thing to start off with a little bit about who Charles Darwin is, because he's kind of a famous name, but probably not many people know exactly the particulars about his life. He was born in 1809 in England, and then after being educated both to be a clergyman, he went into the clergy after an attempt to go into medicine and fainted at the sight of blood, so decided he wasn't going to be a very good doctor in the early 1800s when it took a pretty strong stomach to be a doctor. But he had an opportunity in the 1830s. He was a naturalist on board a ship that was traveling around the world doing a mapping expedition. And some 20 years after that, he published his best-known work, which was called On the Origin of Species. That was published in 1859. And then he lived a number of years after that, published several more works after that, and died in 1882. So that gives you just an idea of who Charles Darwin is. And leading up to his ideas about natural selection, there were several people, really four main people that we're going to talk about that are kind of important to understand, that had ideas that led to this. The first one is a guy named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who obviously, or maybe not, but he was a French fellow. And then there was another guy who lived a little bit before Darwin, whose name was Thomas Malthus. The third one was James Hutton and Charles Lyell. Lamarck was also a naturalist like Darwin. Malthus was an economist, and Hutton and Lyell were both geologists. And so the work of these four gentlemen is what had a direct influence on Darwin's ideas. Okay, we're going to take these guys one at a time, our gallery of old dead white guys. And so the first one is Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. And Mr. Lamarck, or Monsieur Lamarck, was a French naturalist, lived and worked in the late 1700s. And he is often credited as one of the first people to come up with something kind of like a scientific explanation or a scientific theory about evolving species. Most scientists had come to the idea that that species changed, that species weren't constants by the late 1700s or early 1800s. The evidence for this was pretty strong even at that time. But Lamarck's ideas were this. His idea was that species such as the giraffes that we show here were changing gradually, but that they had sort of a goal, that they were gradually changing, that there was a goal that they were evolving towards. Which of course we know now is not correct. It's not supported by our current knowledge of genetics. And that they changed by either using or disusing various organs. And so, for example, the giraffes here evolved to have long necks by stretching their necks for those taller leaves. And so that act of stretching their necks throughout their lives, by doing that, they passed that trait, that longer neck, longer neck, onto their offspring. And so in this way, by using various traits, because of the use of these traits, that was passed on to their offspring. Well, we now know that in terms of what we understand now about genetics, that is just wrong. And an analogy would be to say that, well, if somebody lifted weights throughout their lifetime, that they would have children that had, you know, were born with, you know, really stronger muscles, and which, by our current understanding of genetics, we know that that is just wrong. In fact, there's only a few things in this idea that are correct. So I want to stress that everything about Lamarck, almost everything about Lamarck, is wrong. Okay, but he's important because he had this idea that species change gradually, right? So for that, we at least give him a little bit of credit that there had been this long, gradual process of species changing, which was and is well supported by lots of evidence. So he understood that, but the mechanism that he had, again, with what we know today about genetics, it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that was Lamarck. The next person that we're going to talk about is this guy, Thomas Malthus. Now, Thomas Malthus was an economist, and you might well wonder, well, how does an economist, what does that have to do with evolution? Well, Malthus was interested in studying how human populations changed and how the food supply changed. And one of the things that he noticed was that populations tended to increase exponentially. That when he graphed human population growth, he noticed that it grew exponentially. And when he graphed the growth in food production, he noticed that it increased linearly. Well, like most economists, he had a pretty strong background in math, and he realized that, well, that is a condition that could lead to some trouble in the future. Now, what Darwin did when he read Malthus was he realized that it's not just humans, but all animals, all plants produce offspring in greater abundance than can be supported by the environment. And Malthus was talking about human populations, but Darwin realized this applies to all living things, not just humans, but plants, animals, bacteria, all living things can reproduce much, much, much more rapidly than the environment can support. Okay, so that's Malthus, and that was his contribution. This is the main idea here, is that for all living things, offspring are produced in greater abundance than can be supported by the environment. All living things produce way too many offspring, or at least have the potential of doing that, than can be supported. Okay, so that's our first two. Our next two guys were essentially contemporaries of Darwin. One of them was a little bit older. Lyell was the elder of the two. He started off in the late 1800s, and Hutton, who is this fellow here, was actually a contemporary of Darwin's and worked in the 1800s. Well, their main idea, or one of the main ideas that they came up with, was that the Earth is very, very, very old. Prior to this, people would have placed the age of the Earth in the thousands of years, and they did a number of studies, a number of experiments having to do with calculating sedimentation rates, also calculating the rate of salinity in the ocean, changes in the salinity of seawater. And by these two methods, they came up with the idea that the Earth had to be in the millions of years old. Well, we now know that it's 4.56 billion years old, but the idea was that it just had to be more than a few thousand years old. That was the thing that they, one of the things that they contributed. The other idea that was very well known before this time, dating back to the 1500s, was that sediment layers are cumulative, and that is that when we look at a strata of rocks, it tends to be the older layers on the bottom, younger layers are on top of that. Another important thing that just can't be stated enough is that they observed, as many people have, that the Earth has undergone many changes in the past, that the environment that has been present on the earth, that the environments that we see today are not the way it has always been, and that the earth is still changing by the same processes. We have erosion happening. We have sediments that are accumulating and forming layers of rock. We have volcanoes. We have mountains that are building, and so on. All these processes have been going on for millions and millions of years. And there is some information in the fossil record which shows that species have gone extinct, new species have arrived, and that these patterns are consistent when you look at fossil record across not only in England, which is where these fellows lived, but throughout the world. Okay, so this is some quick reviews that I think you should be able to answer on the left-hand side of the page. All of these things are the ideas that I think that you should know from this VodCast. And if you can answer these, then you're in good shape. Anything that you can't answer, you should definitely come and ask about in class. Okay, so that is going to wrap it up for this VodCast. I'm Mr. Galladay for Honors Biology at Desert Ridge High School, and I hope you have a great day.